is Sarah Soiledplant and welcome back to my channel. This video is all about my top 5 and bottom 5 plants. I have a few plants right now that are definitely going through their issues as far as bugs go. They're just pots of soil. So I'm trying not to pick things that are kind of the obvious ones that are obviously struggling. And I tried to pick ones that are just kind of disappointing me right now as opposed to like truly going through it. I'm going to start with my top plants, and this one is my philodendron micans. This particular plant is just doing really well. It's nice and lush. It is not giving me any problems. It doesn't seem to sort of react badly to being underwatered or even overwatered. Like, I'm watering this the same as all of my other philodendrons that are heartleaf like this. I'm watering them all at the same time, just this one seems the absolute happiest of all of my heartleaf philodendrons right now. Whatever I seem to be doing with this plant, it's definitely loving it. I've always had a very big spot in my heart for heartleaf philodendrons. This one is up there in my favorites. I do love all of them, so it's kind of hard to choose, but right now this one is giving me the absolute everything I could ever hope for from a plant. The philodendron micans, for those unaware, it's basically the same as your standard heartleaf philodendron, the green variety, but this one is considered velvety, but by no means is it like fuzzy, hairy, or true velvet. It's just like a little bit of that like soft texture to it. The other thing about the philodendron micans is it's got the nice warm backs to it where it's on that like, it's sort of a reddy brown color on the back side. So it definitely gives sort of fall vibes, especially if you like shift the light, it kind of, you get that iridescence to it where it kind of shifts from a green to like a brownish red and back and forth. It's just truly a lovely plant. These are one of the more like common plants that is still hard to find, I think just because they're so popular that whenever they show up places, people buy them. They're super easy to propagate, so if you have a friend who happens to have one of these, ask for a couple cuttings, you know, a little couple of nodes, and it'll become a full plant within a season. It really does grow just as well as all of those other heartleaf philodendrons. So I just really highly recommend these. They're just so satisfying to look at, especially when they're nice and full like this. Another common plant that is on my top 5 is this Oxalis triangularis, specifically the purple kind, also known as the red shamrock. I love this so much. I had been waiting to get one of these because every time I'd see them in stores, they were like 4-inch pots or they didn't look very good, and I really wanted a nice full pot. And when I did find one and it was a good price, I ended up killing pretty much every single leaf on that poor plant because I wasn't giving it a ton of light. And I knew I wasn't giving it a ton of light, and I didn't have a better spot for it at the time. Now that I'm in my new place, I've been giving it some prime western window light, and this is what happened. Almost every single leaf that you see has been grown in the last 3 months. When an oxalis is happy, it definitely tells you. It certainly soaks up a lot of water and it needs a lot of sunshine, so if you don't have those two things, your oxalis is probably not going to be very happy. I'm just happy that I found a spot to where the plant can, you know, do its thing. It's starting to get flowers, which is the first time it's had flowers since I got it, or at least that I've grown myself. And the flowers are just perfect little dainty, little lavender, little whisper cute, just like precious little things. These definitely have the potential to die back and grow back. Like I said, all of these leaves that you see here were grown in the last like 3 months or so since it's been in my awesome window. This is one of the few plants I have that's just not green. It's a straight up purple. There's not a stitch of green on it pretty much, aside from in the flowers themselves. The only other plant I can think of that you can grow that doesn't have any green on it is begonias. But even then, I'm not 100% sure, but this plant for sure is that type of plant. And I love it for the variety. I think it's cute. It reminds me of my grandma because she has one of these, and it always reminds me of being up at her house. So I just love this, and I'm so glad I got it to start growing again. I'm glad it's happy with me. But that is the Oxalis triangularis red shamrock. The next plant I'm going to show you is actually behind me, and that is my Hoya carnosa crimson queen. You can tell it's a queen because the white is on the outside of the leaves. If the white was on the inside, it would be a princess. This is one of my oldest plants. I've had this plant for about 3 years. It was tiny when I got it, and the first year it didn't grow at all. The second year it grew some of this, and then by this summer it's just huge, and it's growing a ton from the pot itself. I still have not gotten this plant to flower, but that's okay. I've got it in a south-facing window, and it loves it. It's super happy. I need to propagate it. I know I need to propagate it, but I've never actually propagated a Hoya. And like in theory, Hoya propagation is the same as every other plant, but for some reason, I think it's because of the succulenty leaves, I'm nervous that I'm going to kill this, and it took so long to make this happy and to make it grow. I just have to work up the courage. The other fun thing about this plant is that when new leaves come in, they actually come in like a nice rosy pink color. So all the new growth is pink, and the stems have a nice little pink rosy hue to them. As it ages, it kind of greens up, but the stems themselves stay kind of rosy or pink. I was loving this plant last year when it finally started to grow on me, and it's growing even more this year, so I truly am just like in awe of how beautiful this Hoya is. It took me a long time to get into Hoya, not because I don't think they're pretty, obviously they're gorgeous. It's just in my area they're kind of hard to find, and you would only find, you know, the very, very common ones, like basically a carnosa is the only thing I was able to find. This one is certainly causing a little bit of a Hoya itch, but for right now I am loving this plant. Absolutely love it. The next plant on my top 5 is going to be my Syngonium Ice Frost. It definitely needs a pull. I know, I'm gonna give it one, I promise. My cats did take a nice big chunk out of this leaf, but that was when I put it in a bad spot. It was my own fault. But these leaves are getting so big and so beautiful. And this is the newest leaf. It still needs to harden off. It's a little bit smaller, but we're getting out of the summer months. We're getting closer to fall. So this one's still hardening. It's got another leaf on the way. So it's producing like crazy. I just need to give it a little bit more light. I'm just so impressed with the size of these leaves. I just think this is so cute. I love the pattern on it. I haven't even had this plant for crazy long. I think it's been like 6, maybe 9 months since I bought this plant. And in that 6 to 9 months that I bought it, I feel like it's produced at least 6 of these leaves. So it seems to be very happy with me. I'm happy with it. I'm more than willing to try and give it some more light. And I'm gonna put it on a pole, but even without the pole, even without the proper light, it is just giving me everything I could ever want in this plant. And it's so pretty, I just love it. And the name for this is so appropriate, the little ice frost, because that totally just looks like a little frosty center. Like when you get a little bit of frost on a window pane and it's just slightly on the edges and it's just like diffuses the light just perfectly. Very cute, easy to grow because it's a Syngonium, of course, so I love it. The next plant or plants on my list is the Alocasia Silver Dragon. I bought 2 of these back when I found these, whenever that was, back in the fall, I think, of last year, and they are so gorgeous. They have lived up to every single one of my expectations. They handle my neglect really well. Like these need to be watered right now, and you can kind of tell when they need water because they'll start like curving inward like this and kind of turn into like a little taco. As soon as you see the edges kind of make that little like bend inward, you know that it needs water. I try to water it before it gets to that point. I just repotted both of these about a week and a half ago. I gave them bigger pots because they were in 4-inch pots before, and now they're in 6 because I gotta support this beautiful plant and those big leaves. And typically when I repot, I have to water more often just because the plant is more angry, it's adjusting. So I do need to water these more often when I repot, and these are no different. These plants were actually doing so good that I was able to make a little side plant because it was getting little babies off the side. I put 2 little Alocasia dragon scale babies in here. They're suffering a little bit more, obviously, because they were kind of ripped from mom and repotted. So these don't look quite as cute, but I have full faith that these will rebound and do really well. And I definitely plan on keeping these 2, but any of the sort of babies I make, I would be, you know, selling them, using them for trades, things like that. And these are sought after enough. They're not like so insanely priced, but they're sought after enough that I'm hoping I could get some good trades for maybe some other cute Hoyas or things like that. And these are just so satisfying to own. They tell you when they're thirsty. They reproduce really easily. They're not nearly as bug prone as like an Alocasia friedac or a poly. These colors are just so unique to this plant. I can't. How could I look at this and not be happy? They're just gorgeous. They're freaking gorgeous plants. Like, I was so excited I saw these that when I did see them, I bought 2 just in case I killed one. But both of them are happy, both of them are growing, and they're being just like the best plants I could possibly hope for. I'm so happy with them. I've got another leaf coming in right on this one. They're just, oh, they're so cute. And even the back sides are cute. They've got the red veins and the light green on the backs. They're just so cool, so unique. Definitely a conversation starter of a plant. And now for the not so good news, we have the bottom 5 in my list. I have a lot of plants that are recuperating right now, so I didn't really want to pick any of those. I wanted to pick things that I'm just kind of disappointed in right now that has nothing to do with them like fighting for their lives, I guess. I'll start with an easy one. I just talked about this in my last video, which is my Calathea collection video, and I will link that in the eye for you. The only thing wrong with this plant, I think it's cute, I like it, it's easy to care for, but it doesn't grow very fast. And this might be one of these plants that, like my Hoya, I have for a year and it doesn't grow much, and then it just explodes, figures itself out, starts to like me, and then starts to grow. So it's very possible that this one could find its way out of the doghouse if it starts growing for me. I've had it for a while and it's only produced 2 new leaves for me. I do have one on the way, but it has also taken its sweet time to unfurl and come out. The only real negative to this one is that it's slow growing, and that's pretty much the end of this one, but very slow to grow, like it, wish it was bigger. Next plant on my bottom 5 is this Scindapsus pictus aureus. I've had this for a minute. It's the only Scindapsus I have. I'd love to have more. This one just vines for me like crazy. It constantly is producing vines, but it's also like just very bare and very spread out between the nodes. I've actually cut this and propagated this a handful of times, and it does really well when I propagate it, so no complaints there. It's certainly hardy. Like, it's not dying, it's not upset, really. I'm giving it Western light with the hopes that the internodal spacing will kind of narrow a little bit. And it's certainly hardy, it's not gonna die, it's not, you know, sickly. It just has that long spacing, and it's really hard to make a plant look beautiful and luxurious and healthy when you've got internodal spacing that's, you know, 5-6 inches sometimes between each leaf. You know, it's not the cutest look in the world. And this might be one of those plants that's a good contender for getting a bigger pot and maybe just like wrapping it in and sort of pinning it down and try to make it fuller. And that might be something I do, but I thought giving it Western light would just like spruce it up, and it kind of didn't. The leaves are fairly small considering, like, these are the leaves up top and then these ones are so tiny by comparison. I'm kind of confused why this plant isn't happier with me. Maybe it's root bound, that's possible. I still need to figure it out, but yeah, for right now, this one is giving me a big old question mark, and I'm gonna try and fix it. It's a cute plant. I love the leaves, I love the silver. I love that it's got that like nice texture, much like the Micans does, where it's like soft. It's amazing, and I've seen other people grow really amazing ones, so I know it's possible. I just need to figure out how. The next plant on my list is actually behind me. It's kind of cheating, but it's my Philodendron plominii. This one, I have so many propagations of this plant going. I don't have a million propagations of this just because I want a million of these plants. I would prefer if I had one gigantic Philodendron plominii, but unfortunately this one keeps getting sick and trying to die. This plant has been struggling about 18 months out of the 2 years that it's been separated from the mother plant. It's finally on the mend, but I showed this one because this one is much more interesting to handle. I do have the mother plant, which I will show you pictures of here. It's very unwieldy. It got spider mites a million times, but it's on the mend. It seems to be doing a lot better now, but it's very unwieldy. It's coming out of the pot. It needs to be propagated a whole bunch. Like, I'm working on it. That's definitely on the to-do list, but this is kind of like the cute baby one I can hold up. The other thing is I have this nice little stump in a pot of the Philodendron pluminii. It's the same song and dance as everything else. Like, this one got spider mites and I had to cut all the leaves off. I did make some node propagations with it as well, and I haven't checked this in a few weeks if I'm being honest, and it is a little on the moldy side, so I'm gonna let it air out a bit. But it's just crazy. I've got the main plant which needs to be propagated, I've got these nodes, I've got the pot with dirt in it, and I've got this one. It's just, but none of them, like this one is the best out of all of them. Like this one's doing pretty well considering. Like I might be willing to like actually part with this one now and like sell it or put it in a trade because it has been healthy for a good solid minute, which is like unheard of for this plant. So it might be a good time to, you know, say goodbye to it for good. Because honestly, with all of these propagations I'm going to have pluminii coming out of my ears by the end of all of this. Next, we're going to talk about my jade pothos. It's pretty much the same thing as a golden pothos, just without the golden parts. Doesn't have that yellow variegation. It's just solid green. And all the yellow I do have on it are leaves that are turning on me. Now, this plant is suffering, and it's at the hands of yours truly, and 100% my own fault. This has been pot bound for months, maybe over a year. I wanted to keep it a hanging plant, and this thing is already huge, and the pot itself is already like a 10-inch pot, and I didn't want to go much bigger than that. And this might sound crazy, but what I did was I actually removed this, gave it brand new soil, which is great, new nutrients and things, but there was still a ton of roots, so I ended up just chopping off like almost a third of the roots on this plant. And as a result, it is not happy. It's very sad. Like the bottoms are pretty good. The bottoms are pretty lush, but there's a few very key plants up near the top that are just not having it. They're not happy with it, and I don't blame them. Like if I was this plant, I would also be throwing a hissy fit for how I treated it. But the reason I did that ultimately is because it is a pothos, so even though it looks really sad right now, I do think it'll rebound. But this poor thing has looked like it's been dehydrated and needing water for basically the last year. It's just looked so sad, and I do think this will definitely perk up. I'll be able to take some cuttings and put it back into the pot and actually have room for new cuttings to kind of grow within the pot, and that should make it a little more full. But already the bottom is looking so much healthier and the leaves don't look dehydrated. But for right now, this thing is very angry, and that's why it's on my list. It's been a little bit of a sad plant for a good long time. I finally did something to fix it, and it'll get better. But for now, it's still in kind of its sad state. But I believe this one will rebound and do better. And the last plant on my bottom 5 is going to be my Monstera elbow. Like I said before, this is just for plants that are disappointing me right now. And right now, my Monstera elbow was giving me hardly any variegation. So what I did was I chopped this into pieces and hoping that more variegation comes out when I separate all of the leaves out separately with their own node and grow from scratch. I did a whole video about chopping this up and I will link it in the eye. What I'm hoping is that some of these cuttings will pull more variegation out with the nice light that I'm giving it and everything. And the ones that don't, you know, I'll just put them somewhere. I can add them to my regular Monstera, or I can give them away to people, it just depends. I've already got some good root action growing on some of these cuttings, so I definitely have a lot of hope for these, that they're gonna, you know, survive and do okay, at least as far as like transplanting and things like that. But until they're able to pull more variegation out, technically this is gonna be on my bottom 5. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to give it a like, comment down below. For more content like this, hit that subscribe button, and I will catch you next time. Bye!